Andreas Gyllenhammar. He almost got the Gyllenhammar right, which is great. I flew in here yesterday from Sweden, and when I arrived at the hotel, put on the television, as I usually do, even though it was in the middle of the night, and it was CNN. I didn't understand the other channels at all, so I just flicked to CNN. And they said, be sure to tune in for Future Cities. I said, oh, wow, they're going to be at TEDx. That's great. And they said, on Monday. So that was a bit disappointed, not because they weren't going to be here, but because that everyone is talking about future cities, I think. And what can I contribute with when it comes to, especially we're discussing wonders here. But actually, we've got some amazing projects to show you that I'm working with at the moment and that we have been doing lately. And cities are really, really important. I mean, cities are probably, I think, the closest way that humans can come to playing God, being God. We can create our own universe and do that by taking a lot of resources, build enormous structures. Do you know what it's called, the plan that's behind a city development? The master plan. We do this. It feels like the evil crook in some James Bond movie, the master plan. And with the master plan, we can do exactly this. But we have been so focused on this that we don't know what's happening on the outside. And recently we know that things are happening outside. And although we want to create future cities, we've always been dreaming about future cities. Actually, it's a whole science in itself. It's called retrofuture, looking at the future, but then, or paleo-future, paleo-science, in a way that we thought there was no limits. We could go and move up in the sky. Even the sky wasn't the limit. And looking at this, we can see this bubble that I talked about that we thought we could create. Transportation, we've always been dreaming about that. And transportation used to be something full of lust that we thought was funny. We know now in cities transportation isn't that funny. In Sweden we have a railway, and sometimes there are trains on them as well, but not always, and not always in time. And of course these ideas or visions or dreams could be more or less realistic. Some were quite detailed, like this sea city that was constructed by I was about to say crazy American architect, but the crazy and genius, you know, the line between them is sometimes very weak. He was also kind of a genius. Buckminster Fuller, it was his name. And I thought that, well, this idea has actually become true, looking at the city, floating city of the seas. This is now the largest cruise ship in the world, where 6,000 people can have their own little universe. So sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't. We can be under sea, we can be up in the air, and as I said, transportation is something lustful and funny. We could live in space, why not? We heard that earlier today. We thought that before as well, but then we didn't even think that we would need an atmosphere up in space. So let's see, what did we end up with our future dreams of cities? Well, unfortunately, many times, this is the result. And this is not something that we want to have. It's not good for the environment, we know that now. It's not good for people, it's not good for the health. We bring in loads of resources into this city that destroys them and brings it out as waste. It's not even good for the economy. So what happened? What happened with our dreams? Why didn't we realize them? Well, more people needs better planning, of course, and more people in cities. Because nowadays, 50% of the world population live in cities, but we are enormously urbanizing the world, and 44 million people every year are moving into cities. So in just 40 years, there will be 75% of the world population living in cities. Let's see about China. There's been a lot of talk about China and focus on their urbanization. And I think basically that's because they are booming in China, of course, but they're also doing it at an enormous speed. In Sweden, it took about 100 years to move from an agricultural society to an industrialized and centralized city society. In China, they're basically doing that in 10 years. And this is a picture from a town that I visited in, I think it was 2 years ago. The city is called Kunming. It's in the southwestern part of China, up against the border towards Tibet. City used to have 1 million people there, but nowadays there are 5 million people. And they're quickly moving ahead towards 8 million people. So almost the whole of Sweden in one city. And you can imagine the speed they are building with at the moment, and of course the consequences if they don't do this in a sustainable way. We were there to give a workshop for municipality people working with different aspects of city planning. And the first thing we wanted to see, of course, was the poor little lake downstream of this city that took all the effluents from the town. It was called Dianchi Lake. We started to worry when we saw this surface, and the closer we got, it looked more and more like spinach or something. It wasn't, it was water. And of course, you can imagine the problems and the toxic waste that are in this mess. And this is what people have to deal with in their everyday life, which is really sad. So we thought, is China, are they going to crash us now? Because there's not only problems at home, they also emit a lot of carbon dioxide that affects the climate worldwide. But I returned to China last year, and we saw a completely different picture. So although they are running at full speed in the wrong direction, that is changing very fast. This is from Shanghai, the Department of City Development, where they have produced a sustainable city plan. And they're going to reach that in just about 9 years from now. So they are turning this big machine around to go in the right direction. And let's look about the right direction, because I will give you some views on a sustainable city and the cities of the future that we need to reach. I work with really good illustrators at work, and we sat down and said, can we create kind of the perfect city in a way? There is no such thing as a perfect city, because it will look different in different areas of the world. But let's imagine that we could create the city really as we wanted. Because it doesn't really matter the way it looks, it's the function of the city that's important. So we created this illustration. And cities, as I said, can take us from problem to solution. I mean, cities are the reason why people are moving into cities is not just because they want to have something to work with, but it's also because cities have an attraction. It can fulfill people's needs of meetings, creativity, entrepreneurship, and so on. Let's look at this town, and I will try to explain some of the main functions that we need to achieve. Looking at the house, take for example this. It can have different purposes. It can be a school, it can be a shop, anything. But nowadays, when we create those cornerstones of city planning, we can't just look at the house by itself. The house has different functions and flows. Flows of water, of energy, and of waste. And these need to be looked upon in the whole city planning perspective. Move ahead here, and we can see the energy to this house, because we need to know where we're going to feed it from. So we make an overview, and maybe we'll make a quick stop right about here. Remember that bubble over there. We'll get back to that later on. And then we move out onto these fields to see the energy that is a part of a sustainable city. Quite close to the town now, we need these kinds of installations of solar power, renewable energy, wind, it can be water over here, we have a dam. And these ones we are feeding into the cities. Looking a bit from above, we can see that these parts of the town here have some kind of exchange here. And we want to illustrate that heat is not something that gets lost after you use it. You can pump it down, back into the ground again, and use it in the winter to warm the houses, and vice versa. We can then put down cold water in the winter to use for cooling in the summers. And this is not just a simple system, because if we look at what happens with energy over here, we can also use it when we come back to wastewater. So it's not only closing those loops, it's integrating all of the different flows into a city. For example, over here we have waste coming in here that takes this excess heat and turns this maybe into, well, let's say biogas. And biogas can be used to put into the transportation system and feed it into the city, so we don't need oil or bring in petrol. All these things can be done nowadays. It's about technology. We know how to do it, but also, as you see here, we have, of course, the social dimension. We have people in the city, and that's really important to remember. And that's where you are starting to come in here, and why I said that you are invited in this process. Let's see. How can we do this? Well, we found out that the best way to do this is not sitting along with our master plan. It's by inviting you to be a part of it. We have to do this together. That's when we reach the real sustainable solutions. Let me give you one example. It's not about the city, although we have used it for cities as well. This is a building up in the Swedish mountains that we got designed to make the most sustainable mountain hut in the world. How to do that? This is a really sensitive area where a lot of different conflicting interests. We have the indigenous people, the Sami people with reindeer herding, we have nature and conservation, and of course we have tourists. And these often clash in these areas. But by inviting them all to be a part of constructing this hut, and of course we have tools for that, so we do it in a constructive way. We start with telling each other knowledge, and everyone can start to put out the values they want to have in this. We develop ideas from that, and the architect or the process leader, which is then basically the professional, is only leading this process, not steering it or not telling people what the house should look like. After that, we do a redesign, and this group of people can evaluate different aspects of the building, and then we start to see, shall this building be like a pair of goggles, or do you want to have this? And these are all core values put into a physical context. So we ended up with a really cool concept here of different cylinders being reflecting different parts of the values that people wanted to have in this building. And when we then start to develop, we can see that none of the major stakeholders will object to this because they've been a part of reaching this solution. So it's a quick and efficient. We also done it in larger cities, of course, when it comes to sustainable city planning. This is in Tianjin, Hangzhou, in China, a city for 150,000 people, with a lot of eco-cycle models in it. And this is a larger one in China, for about 1 million people in Tangshan Bay Eco-City. Here we did the planning and tried to formulate different goals. And we came up with 9 goals here that should govern our master plan. And the city is not going to be just green, it's going to be blue and livable, innovative, beautiful, and so on and so forth. So all these aspects can guide the plan that we steer for. Here you have the bubble again. The bubble is an interesting project that we've set out to explore with another company. And it's actually a greenhouse. As I said, we don't want to move things to and from cities if we don't have to. And also we have these flows with energy, waste, as I said. So let's try it. What do we need to grow plants? We need water, we need nutrients, we need energy. Hey, all these things are in the city limits. So just put down the greenhouse there and we can use all this instead of wasting it. This is a 40-meter high building, and it's not only a concept anymore. We'll probably start to actually put it up in the town in Sweden. This one can provide salad for almost 500,000 people a year by doing this growing inside, because we can have control of this system. So you see, it also would be a quite spectacular way to have in a city. These are just different animations of showing how that could look. As I said, the main trick is to combine a lot of knowledge and share it with the ones that are going to be a part of this city. Here you can see the rotating beds of salad moving upwards. All right. Where should we go from here? I think it's not about having these architects doing the master plan anymore. It's about combining a lot of different knowledge. It's a creative blend, and you have to fusion a lot of different disciplines to do this and invite people to do it. And I would like to finish off by citing a really good saying here that is, I think, captures the essence of what I was going to try to say. Because reconnecting with the dream that we're talking about and the wonder that people start to think that we could live in spaceship and so on, that is what probably needs to be the motivation for this change into a sustainable society. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood and don't assign them tasks and work. Rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea by Exupéry. So, thank you very much.